contemplating a wall or physical barrier, they are wasting their time. The federal government was partially shut down for 35 days amid a dispute over border wall funding. It has since reopened on the condition that talks would continue. British Prime Minister Theresa May continues to try and save her so-called Brexit deal. Fox's Simon Owen reports.
British Prime Minister Theresa May preparing to go back to Brussels and ask for the divorce deal she agreed with the EU last year to be renegotiated. This after lawmakers here instructed her to do just that.
The plan that was set out last night shows that we can obtain a substantial and a sustainable majority in this House.
But EU President Jean-Claude Juncker saying the time for talking is over.
The withdrawal agreement will not be renegotiated.
He added, though, that the EU will work night and day to try and find a solution. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
And a Houston Texans star is giving back to his mom, or as Simon Owen might say, mum. Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson decided the best way to thank his mother for helping him reach his NFL dreams was to renovate the home he grew up in Georgia. The family received the home from Habitat for Humanity when Watson was 11 years old. His mother, a survivor of throat cancer, still lives in the house. Watson redid the dining area, living room, and more. Find more news at onenewsnow.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices. Thanks for listening.
Holy Spirit speaks to everybody. The problem is most folks don't listen.
Lonnie Poindexter.
If they do listen, they don't take it to heart or they get fearful or whatever. But when you listen and act upon it, wonderful things happen. And because a man of God heard the voice of God and acted upon it, it blesses me today. And you as well for listening in.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If you have more than $50 million in assets, this is the ultra rich, you're going to have to pay 2% a year of that amount over $50 million.
I know my motivation is to tell the truth, and I will affirm that what is in the indictment about me is accurate, and I will affirm that if asked to in court.
How late in the third trimester would you be able to do that?
The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks. I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Yeah. Oh, my. Wow. Such an amazingly dastardly slate of news that we have for today on the program. And I just thank you for being here. Thank you for making your home at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. It's fantastic to be with you. So who do we have on the show today? Well, we're going to be speaking with author Jerome Corsi. You may have heard of him with the Mueller probe, and he's written a new book called Silent No More, How I Became a Political Prisoner of Mueller's Witch Hunt. And it's kind of fascinating to hear from him directly about what's happened to his life since he was embroiled in this and in this investigation. He's going to come on. We're going to hear from him in his own words about what's been going on, how it's impacted him, and what we can expect. We also are going to talk about, we have a little bit of audio of Roger Stone on Fox News talking about what he's going through right now. And so the point of these interviews is not that I have any knowledge or anything that I could predict about anyone being guilty or innocent, but it is a matter of fact that in our country, in the United States, you are innocent until proven guilty in front of a jury of your peers. And so these investigations have not yet concluded, and they're not, the entire report has not been issued for us to then go through as American citizens and weigh what we feel are the facts, what they feel are the facts, or what they have presented as the facts, and for us to go through and ascertain who's right, who's wrong, what the truth of the matter is. I'm excited to get to speak to Jerome today, and you know, the main thing I'm concerned with is that we continue to see only prosecutions of people who are associated with Donald Trump. And anyone who is associated with Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, they have remained uninvestigated. That is not the blind lady of justice that we have come to really tout as our Anglo-Saxon judicial system. And so we've got to get back to it. So I'm excited to speak to him today. We're also going to talk about this big, huge subject. Obviously, the Mueller investigation is wrapping up. We heard a little bit of that from Matthew Whitaker. He's announced that the Mueller investigation is nearly over. It has upset a great number of people, including Bill Kristol and some others who are often on television, because the wrapping up of the investigation without finding any of the Trump world associates guilty of collusion and interacting with the Russians as agents means they probably don't have that kind of evidence on the president either. I think a lot of people are going to be embarrassed and humiliated, and the Democrats are going to provide cover. The Democrat-owned media, CNN, MSNBC, they're going to provide cover, and they're going to try to lessen the impact of the humiliation. They're going to frame it as some kind of botched investigation. They're going to say that Donald Trump has intimidated people, and all kinds of really crazy things are going to be alleged about the president and the entire DOJ and their pet rock, the FBI. So they're going to turn on them. Mark my words, they will turn on those agencies and those people that they have up to this point been holding up as paragons of virtue. And Mueller himself will probably come under attack. And all I can say is the only thing we have to really concern ourselves with is that one particular concept, innocent until proven guilty. And if you do not have a preponderance of the evidence with which to present a case and a jury of your peers is not finding you guilty of anything, then a person is innocent. So let's calmly go into this next topic. And it dovetails in with my my daily confession today. Before I formed you, I knew you, because this topic is really it's everywhere. Well, it's everywhere except on your local television news. You would think that something as abominable as saying a human baby that is moments before birth, that you could still kill that baby and call it abortion, something that's supposed to be safe, legal, and rare, and only in instances of incest or rape or health of the mother, or, you have 6 kids already and you just can't have any more, and so you're going to have to make this terrible sacrifice by, killing another person. That is supposed to be what abortion, that's what it was billed to us as. That's what they've been selling for the past, umpteen years since the passage of Roe v. Wade in 1973. We've been told this is to prevent back alley abortions. This is to prevent coat hangers. This is to prevent unsanitary conditions. And this is to prevent people from being forced into having abortions in back alleys instead of being able to walk into a nice clinic and make a choice for themselves. And we've gotten so far away from that we now see in New York, we've already discussed the abomination that went on there. But now we have Democrats in Virginia who have proposed this before. So Virginians don't even see this as new news. They're now saying and have proposed that they want to pass a bill allowing abortions up to 40 weeks. Now, if you're just tuning into the show, you might want to buckle in, because as a permanently tanned individual made by God in his image, just as you are, I am pro-life, regardless of the feelings of anyone who might have just tuned in. Welcome home. You're on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Thank you for being here. This subject should transcend right and left politics. This subject is about something that how did you exist up until this moment if you haven't interacted with a human baby before? You were a baby at one point, but you're not going to remember that. So somewhere in your life you have interacted with a human baby up to this point. Now, we're not talking about what we used to be told over and over again. It's just a clump of cells. It's not really human. It doesn't look human. It doesn't have hands and feet, and it can't feel anything. That's what we've been told is the legitimization of abortion up to 24 weeks. And after 24 weeks, they say, well, it's still just a lump, and it's still not really human, and it can't breathe on its own. It can't live outside the mother. So we gotta have a choice to kill that too. Late-term abortion is only in the health of the mother. So doctors are now coming out and saying, look, there's no reason to abort a baby in the 3rd trimester. because the third trimester means the baby is formed and able to live on its own outside of the mother's womb. Early inducement of the mother can happen so that the mom can have chemotherapy or radiation if the mom is diagnosed with cancer during the pregnancy. If the mom becomes sick to the point where she can no longer carry the baby, they don't kill the baby. They induce early labor or have a C-section and take the baby out and take it to the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. So the advances in medicine, and especially here in America, where we're on the cutting edge of medical technology and advancement, we are the innovators in medicine. There is no legitimate reason, according to doctors who are now publicly, they're not even concerned about how political this looks. They're basically coming out and saying, I've taken the Hippocratic Oath and there's no way I would engage in this because it is medically unnecessary. Any baby in the third trimester can be removed from the mother and kept alive. There's no reason to kill the baby. And when we talk about, like, we have to be real here about what we're discussing. We're talking about a baby that at any other point, if it wasn't for this issue of abortion, if any friend of yours, if any relative of yours, if you're a grandparent and your children are of childbearing years and they were expecting a baby and they were told in the 7th month, we have to take the baby now because your baby needs surgery or whatever. You wouldn't say, no, don't take the baby, kill it. No, because you and I know that premature born babies that are cared for properly grow into fully functioning, healthy adults. So do babies who are born a week or too early. Just like babies who are born a week or too late. I happen to have started my entry into this world late. I was late. I was born late. And so I ended up being born on my mom's birthday. My mom's a twin, so all three of us have the same birthday. And for my kids, I thought, oh, no, they'll probably be late too, because whatever kind of labor and delivery your mom has, it's kind of like, you could possibly, you have a high chance of having that same thing. And my oldest child she was a little late, but I didn't wait 2 weeks. She was like a day or two late. And I went and had some jalapeno chili and walked them all until I was exhausted and went home, and I went to labor about 4 hours after that. But for you to say that a baby that is 38 weeks, 39 weeks, 40 weeks, and so full term, that baby is 6.5, 7 pounds. That is it's a doll. It's the size of the dolls that you see little girls dragging around in the mall with them or pushing in their tiny little, baby doll strollers. It's a baby. A crying, breathing human child. And it is alive and able to go to another family. There are literally hundreds of thousands of families out there, couples who have infertility issues, but there aren't enough newborn babies or even babies under the age of 12 months to adopt. And so often they do they'll do the in vitro fertilization. They'll go through a whole bunch of different things for years and years and years because they really want an infant. They want the experience of having a baby. So the idea that this is necessary is ludicrous. Now, I'm not the only one who thinks it's ludicrous. The woman who's describing this, Tran, she's a delegate in the Virginia House of Delegates. She's being questioned by one of her colleagues about this bill, and she doesn't like the tone of the questioning. You have to hear this for yourself. And while you're hearing it, I need you to think about the last time a friend of yours, a child of yours, a sister, a brother, an uncle, anyone you know had a baby, what it would be like if someone said, I don't want this baby, and the only option is to kill it. 40 weeks. What would you think of that? What would you do? If you were in New York, you would do nothing because it's now lawful there to kill a baby of that age. And one more thing, for those who think that we're over-dramatizing this or that conservatives we're triggered, we're snowflakes, we don't know how to handle people dissenting with us or different ideas. This means that, because you must remember the case, and if you didn't hear about it, just Google it. High school boy tried to kill his girlfriend because she was pregnant. And, read the story for yourself. Imagine what happens if a sexual predator gets an underage girl pregnant or a grown woman pregnant. They don't have to kill the woman anymore. They can just beat her to within an inch of her life and cause her to lose the baby. And they won't be prosecuted if they're in the state of New York because they didn't kill anything. Because in New York City, a baby up until 40 weeks is not something that is protected by law. The life of that baby is no longer protected. Let's listen to this heinous debauchery here. It's really, we're coming full bore into the sin that has to happen before God passes judgment on us as a country. It's number one.
How late in the third trimester would you be able to do that?
You know, it's very unfortunate that our physicians, witnesses, were not able to attend today to speak specifically.
No, I'm talking about your bill. How late in the third trimester could a physician perform an abortion if he indicated it would impair the mental health of the woman?
Or physical health.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm talking about the mental health.
So, I mean, through the third trimester. The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Okay. But to the end of the third trimester.
Yep. I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
So, where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs that she is about to give a birth, would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would make.
I understand that. I'm asking if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
So you might be horrified by that. I certainly am. We're going to hear from, as we're going out here, it's Ainsley Earhart. She's talking about how this impacted her learning of this. Oh, I hear the music. Okay. We'll hear that audio from Ainsley Earhart, and I have a bit more for you. We actually have Virginia governor just endorsed killing a baby once it's fully delivered. The governor of Virginia, we have that and so much more for you. Stay right there. Stacey on the Right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You can't squeeze more into 3 days, and we will in Washington, D.C. on our Spiritual Heritage Tour in June and in September. We're going to the Capitol, Library of Congress, the Supreme Court, the Lincoln Memorial, the Korean and Vietnam Memorials, the Iwo Jima Memorial, the Arlington National Cemetery, the White House, that's outside, Jefferson Memorial, and the National Archives, and we're going to Mount Vernon on that Saturday of our tour. So much to see, so much to do, and it includes lectures and talks from Stephen McDowell, who will be our historian along the way. For more information on these June or September Spiritual Heritage Tours and the separate tour to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, for all the information on this, go to spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. In 1978, Karen and our children and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and began praying for a house. We tried to save every dime we could for a down payment on a home. With what we were making and the cost of houses, it just wasn't working, but we kept praying. I wish I had time for all the details, but one day I received a phone call from a man who told me he had made a lot of money in a business transaction, and he wanted to help us to get a house. I hung up that telephone, and the tears started flowing down my cheeks. I kept saying to myself, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. But at the same time, something said to me, what did you expect? You asked, and God answered. Remember the story of Peter in Acts chapter 12? This was Peter's second stint in prison. Verse 5 of Acts chapter 12 says, So Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. While they're in prison, God answers, and Peter's standing there knocking on the door of the very house in which they're having the prayer meeting. But they keep praying. This girl named Rhoda comes and tells them Peter's outside. Verse 15 says, They said to her, You are out of your mind. But she kept insisting that it was so, and they kept saying, It is his angel. But Peter continued knocking, and when they opened, they saw him and were amazed. What did they really expect? Well, what do you expect? Here's what I want you to remember today. When we pray, God wants us to expect an answer. And when he answers, he doesn't want us to be surprised, but he does want us to fall down and worship him in praise.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org. Join Crawford tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here today. I'm so excited to speak to our next guest. I want to hear all that he has to say about his new book and everything that's been going on with him with the Mueller investigation. It's my pleasure to welcome Jerome Corsi to the program. And I want to point everyone over to, you can obviously, as always, go to Amazon.com and find the book. The book is called Silent No More, How I Became a Political Prisoner of Mueller's Witch Hunt. Mr. Corsi, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Stacy. Thank you very much.
So talk to me. I know I've been following your case and the other cases that have whatever they've given to the public for us to consume news-wise. And I've just been surprised by how virulent the opposition has become in insisting that you and others affiliated with the president are some kind of agents of Russia. Meanwhile, none of the convictions or indictments have anything to do with collusion or anything that really is within the original scope of the investigation.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, and I've been arguing, Stacey, repeatedly that this unequal justice where, Mueller is charged is apparently only to investigate Russian collusion as it affects Donald Trump is unequal justice. It's not the way justice should work in America. I can tell you from my own experience firsthand that the Mueller team was not interested in any evidence that has to deal with obvious, I think, corruption and collusion within the Department of Justice, where so many people like this Strzok and Page were exchanging emails that made it clear they hated Donald Trump and were going to do everything they could to have this insurance policy to remove him from office should he get elected. This is what needs to be investigated, and I think the American people are clearly seeing through what is, I allege in my book, Silent No More, is a political witch hunt. And Mueller was going to make me a political prisoner to it by charging that, wanting me to accept a plea agreement, which I refused to do.
So why? So why do they want you to take? Is because accepting a plea agreement is the equivalent of a conviction, and therefore they can say, look, we've got another of the members of Trump world, Trump organization, et cetera, and it kind of gives them credibility in continuing the witch hunt, or what?
I assume that that's part of the blinking, but I mean, look, what the case was that I did not lie to Mueller at all. In fact, my 40 hours of interrogation blew up when I could not give Mueller. I had no link to Julian Assange. I've never met with Julian Assange. I've never spoken with Julian Assange. Julian Assange affirms in his by mentioning me by name that I've never had any contact with him or with WikiLeaks. Now, it was fraudulent what the special prosecutor did. The first day of my 40-hour testimony went over 2 months, 6 sessions. I had not seen my 2016 emails, and I was asked, well, did I want somebody to go to see Julian Assange? I said no. Well, I'd forgotten this email where in July 2016, Roger Stone had sent me an email, said, get somebody to go see Assange. I forwarded that email forwarded it to Ted Mallock in London, and the special prosecutor said you did want somebody to go to see Assange. So we can prove what you just said was demonstrably false, and you lied to us. Well, they allowed me to go home and load my 2016 emails. I found that one, and I came back and they amended my testimony. But yet when the special prosecutor blew this all up, they wanted me to plead guilty to the first day's memory mistake, not to the fact that it was amended. Well, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. I'm not going to go in front of a grand jury and put my hand in a Bible or judge and swear that I knowingly and willfully gave the special prosecutor information I knew to be false on a material issue in order to deceive them. I didn't do that. I forgot a couple of emails. But, that's the crime, and I'm convinced I did not commit that crime, even though my memory is bad. And the special prosecutor, I think, finally has accepted that I don't have a connection to Mueller. They've examined every aspect of my life, every aspect of everything I've done, sent people out, the FBI, to interview everybody I was talking to or really interacting with in 2016. Their investigation is extensive, but yet they cannot find anything I've done wrong.
So, and I've been likening this to, someone basically saying, look, come in here. We're going to ask you some questions about your work from 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, or whenever they kind of brought you in. And then without you having any notes or access to a laptop or your calendar, they start to take you through a line of questioning where you're telling the truth to the best of your knowledge and you don't have anything to hide, but they're kind of making meticulous notes on everything that you're saying so that they can catch you up. And it's not because they think you're guilty of anything. They want to get you on the crime of lying to them, which I have no problem with it being a crime to lie to federal prosecutors. I think that's appropriate, but it's not okay for them to intentionally place you in a scenario where I don't remember all of my emails from 2016. I don't remember the ones from 2017 or 2018. I know people that I've communicated with. I can give you a general idea, but if you start talking about specific dates, I need to go back to my calendar and take a look. Not because I'm guilty, but because my memory just does not retain those kinds of details. I think that's pretty normal for Americans who have, 40,000 unread emails in our boxes. If you work anywhere, you have tens of thousands of unread emails. So how is it that they can justify this with a straight face if Mueller is supposed to be this upstanding, amazing person, Jerome? I mean, we're talking about how it's like he set the stars and the moon on, he's just the most outstanding individual ever. And we're all supposed to believe everything he says, even if our eyes tell us he's lying. How could he get this so wrong?
Well, I think the key here is that I've not done anything wrong. And Mueller has not charged me with anything. In fact, it looks to me now like in Roger Stone's indictment, they're planning to use me as a witness. And it looks like the testimony I did give to Mueller, including to the grand jury, they clearly want to use either me as a witness or my emails and my messages as evidence. But I'm person number one in this indictment. I think that means I'm witness number one. And I can affirm what they have stated in the indictment is all consistent and true with everything I've said, testified to, and with the 40 hours of voluntary interviews I did with them and my testimony to the grand jury the one day I went to the grand jury. And you can also see it reflected as accurate in what I reported as Silent No More. I mean, how I reflected this interrogation is 40 hours. They pick you up at the hotel, FBI does. They drive you to an unmarked FBI building in the southeast section of Washington. And you are ushered up. You come in through the garage. You give up your cell phones and your laptops, any electronics. They usher you up to this conference room, which has no windows in it, internal conference room. Of course, it's got a observation dome in the center, on the corner by the wall, where you can, obviously somebody in another room can watch everything that's going on. And then you're confronted by 3 prosecutors and up to 6 to 9 FBI on the other side of the table. And when you deal with this hour after hour after hour of investigation, questioning, I mean, my mind became mush. I mean, you can't, did I remember it? You said, well, Dr. Corsi, we don't want you to invent it or reconstruct it. We really want you to remember it. Well, it becomes impossible after a while to distinguish whether you're reconstructing or remembering. And truthfully, I'm not a human tape recorder. I don't remember the exact words or the exact things in an email or what I said to someone on a telephone conversation precisely in the granular detail they were demanding I remember it.
So I guess one of the questions that I'm dying to ask is, so you would be, against this indictment to Roger Stone, you're going to be witness one as opposed to, person of interest number one. is there any truth to the allegation that there's been some kind of interaction or connection or working through any of that stuff in order to change the result of the American election in 2016 between the Trump campaign and Trump surrogates and the Russians?
Well, you know, Roger's not being charged with collusion. There's nothing in this indictment. This indictment is all about lying to the House Intelligence Committee and witness tampering.
But I thought there had to be some kind of crime associated with it in order for it to be witness tampering, in order for it to be,
Well, the crime that they're alleging Roger did was lying to the House Intelligence Committee. That's what they're accusing him of doing. Just that. This is another process charge. It's Roger lying to a House committee. You know, many people in the Obama administration lied and were proven to lie, including James Comey, to congressional committees. They're not indicted with anything. But this is Roger. No collusion is in here at all. I had no contact with Assange. That was the main falling apart with me and the special prosecutor, is that I cannot connect Roger Stone to Julian Assange because I don't know Assange. I was going to go Roger Stone to me, to Julian Assange, and then communicating with Trump, and that was their collusion. But I can't prove that. My evidence is being cited in this indictment only in regard to the lying allegations against Roger, not Russian collusion at all.
So, in your opinion, from what you know, Roger Stone intentionally misled the Mueller team in his answers to them about this investigation?
Well, Roger never spoke with the Mueller team, to the best of my knowledge. This is entirely testimony under oath that Roger gave to the House Intelligence Committee. And in it, the basis of the indictments are that he misrepresented facts intentionally to the House Intelligence Committee, and that's what he's being charged with. Not collusion with Russia, not lying to Mueller, but lying to the Congress.
Okay, so this thing's wrapping up. We just heard from Acting Attorney General Whitaker that the Mueller investigation is in its final weeks. And, you know, thank God. It's been 2 years and multiple tens of millions of dollars of American taxpayer dollars. We need a resolution to this. So the humiliation that's inbound is going to be for people who have said openly on television repeatedly that the president is an agent of Russia, that they are his puppet masters, that he's done all of these things because the Russians wanted him to. They're about to experience the full weight of the truth, which is that none of that has any weight or bearing. Am I right?
I think so. I think those who are expecting the Mueller report or the Mueller indictments to lead to Donald Trump and the idea that Donald Trump's an agent of Russia are going to be badly disappointed, because there's nothing in Roger's indictment, and that's the highest indictment so far, nothing in any of the other indictments that implicate Donald Trump. And certainly I have no evidence that would implicate Donald Trump. I mean, I didn't communicate with Julian Assange at all. Julian Assange affirms that. I was not a member of Donald Trump's campaign. I didn't talk to Donald Trump. You know, I saw him once at the Trump Towers when he was going up into the elevators. He kind of pointed out to me and made a little quip of a joke. We didn't talk. No conference, no discussion. I've not had any phone calls with Donald Trump at all. So there's no way, you know, you're going to use anything I have, because I was a reporter. The special counsel was interested in me because they thought I could link Roger Stone to Assange. That in July and August, when I was in Italy on a vacation trip, it was actually my 25th wedding anniversary. We were celebrating my wedding anniversary with my wife and family, and I had time. I figured out that Assange had Podesta's emails, but I figured that out. It was a deduction I made. It just happened to be remarkably right. But there was nothing in that indicated at all I had any contact with Assange, even though that's what the prosecutors assumed. They wanted me to link Roger Stone to Assange. I can't do that. And that's where my testimony broke up, and they wanted to charge me with this crime I didn't commit. I refused to accept their plea deal, even though they were threatening to put me in prison for the rest of my life. I'm 72 years old. 1 year in prison could kill me. I mean, that's what they were. They wanted me to lie to this plea deal, which I did not do on testimony. They had allowed me to amend, and that was their deal to stay out of prison. I wouldn't do it.
I'm so glad you're able to withstand the onslaught. When you were describing just then, and if you're welcome to the program, if you're just tuning in, I'm chatting with Jerome Corsi. He is, a journalist and someone that we've previous to this point always heard of you connected with politics and your writing and all of that. And now you've written a new book, and I really encourage everyone to go over to Amazon and check it out. I love Audibles, but you can also download the online copies. You can any way you'd like to get it. The book is called Silent No More: How I Became a Political Prisoner of Mueller's Witch Hunt. And Jerome has joined us today to talk about the book, why he wrote it, and how this investigation has really become what the literal epitome of what the president coined, witch hunt. And it's going so far as to, as you just described, this is the kind of stuff we see on TV at night where someone's in an undisclosed, black site for the FBI and they're getting questioned. But the person being questioned is always the bad guy. And we're always on the side of the good guys, which are the agents who are doing the interrogation. And they're always brought to justice at the end of 47 minutes or 43 minutes or whatever we've got on TV nowadays. And then we all go on about our business. But you've been living this. And for you to have to think that you might die in prison, there's something wrong here. And I really appreciate you coming on the show today and writing the book. And I wish you the best. I hope everything gets really justice, that justice would be served. And
all right.
You'd be able to
please
go back
take
to
a look at my website, Corsi Nation, CORSI Nation.com, and that's where my legal defense fund is. Mueller's now managed to cut off all my income. And, I've got mounting legal bills. So this is they try to bankrupt you as well. This is massive economic pressure, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Well, thank you. And I encourage people to share this podcast and let everybody know what's going on here. Jerome, good luck to you, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. We'll be back with more right after this. Stay there.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've seen God open up so many doors for us to help serve and love those who get affected by a natural disaster.
As the trees and the wind started crashing down around us, my wife was, of course, very diligently praying, Lord, please be with us.
Very simply, we do it because God commands us to love others.
I see these volunteers all as a gift from God.
And I'm just grateful they're here, helping out. It's a blessing.
If you're interested in becoming a part of what God's doing through 8 Days of Hope, please go to 8daysofhope.com, click on Get Involved, submit your email address.
I've noticed that whenever there's a time in my life when things might be a little gloomy, the number one thing that I can do is to go serve somebody.
And I would encourage anyone else to, it's worth it. Come out and do it next time if you didn't make it to this one, and the Father will really bless you in it.
Thank you so much for your prayers and volunteering with 8 Days of Hope.
Pastor D.
The Back to God movement always reminds people that we got to know who we are and whose we are. And we are children of the Most High God. Made in His image and likeness. That's what Genesis 1:26 says. Made in His image and likeness. So that means if Yeshua could walk on water, guess what? We can too.
Each weekday at 4 o'clock Central on Urban Family Talk. And let's get
back to God.
Doc, I've been feeling a little out of sorts lately. Can you help?
Well, let's try a few questions. What do you think of when I say the word Roku?
Oh, my wife and I used to love that dance when we were younger.
Yes, I'd say you're a little out of touch.
What do you recommend?
I recommend you listen to AFR.
American Family Radio. Available on Apple and Android products, Amazon Alexa, and now available on Roku.
And then we'd whip, and then we'd nay-nay. Oh, it was wonderful.
From America's election headquarters.
The current president rarely apologizes. But Democrats who may challenge him are kicking off campaign season by saying sorry. contenders whose records clash with progressive priorities are signaling they've changed, like Joe Biden, whose history includes support of the 1994 crime bill that progressives blame for the mass incarceration of minorities.
I haven't always been right.
Biden's long record also includes a stint as Senate Judiciary Committee chairman, and now says he also regrets not objecting to the way colleagues strongly challenged Clarence Thomas accuser Anita Hill.
I wish I could have done more to prevent those questions.
Senator Bernie Sanders is also apologizing for not knowing some campaign staffers were accused of sexual misconduct.
Absolutely unacceptable.
Tulsi Gabbard says she's sorry, too, for previous condemnations of same-sex marriage.
In my past, I said and believed things that were wrong.
Peter Ducey, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
This is where she began her career as a prosecutor, where she first said the words, Kamala Harris for the people. It is now her campaign slogan. So what will she talk about in her campaign? It is going to be populist in nature, and it will be unapologetically populist. Here are the 5 points that the campaign says in excerpts that were obtained by CNN prior to her giving this speech. She'll be hitting on these 5 points that she wants to seek: Medicare for all, a middle-class tax cut, access to education. That includes universal preschool as well as debt-free college, criminal justice reform, and fighting climate change. One of the words that she will be, one of the phrases that she will be speaking is something that will carry forth in this campaign. She will be saying to this crowd, quote, I love our country and I feel a deep sense of responsibility to stand up and fight for the best of who we are and what our country can be. The people in power are no match for the power of the people.
Oh, so that's a reporter talking from the floor of the big 20,000 strong gathering that Kamala Harris had to on her official campaign launch kickoff kind of party she had. It was a rally, very well attended. It was actually a bigger campaign launch kickoff type deal than what President Obama had, which is a great indicator for her candidacy and how popular she is. The issue is she's not a populist. You know that, and I know that. She's nothing like President Trump. She doesn't believe that people who shop at Walmart, like me and you, have any ability to govern ourselves. If you're in the middle of the country, if you're in a country where most of the people around you have a Southern accent, if you are a regular church attendee, if you think Western civilization is killer and like is the best civilization ever, if you think that certain civilizations and societies are inherently better than others because of their rule of law and their constitution and their laws and the people themselves, if you think Americans are exceptional, if you have the American experience running through your veins and it's white hot like fire and you just know that it's the most awesome thing ever, if you actually pray to God and believe that he answers your prayers, or that you can hear from heaven, or that you can change the trajectory of history through your prayers, that if you get together with a bunch of people and you pray about something day after day, week after week, year after year, that God will move, then she's not talking about you. So she says, we the people, the people are going to be this defining force. She's talking about leftists who know better than you, leftists who live on the coast, leftists whose parents may or may not have been, natural born citizens, people who know better than you, who've been to the right colleges, who have the right letters behind their names, who don't own their own businesses because they work for Google or Facebook or Twitter or some derivative thereof. People who understand that it's way more important to make sure that everybody can afford to have a $900 payment on an Audi Q5. That's way more important than you being able to live in a house that you can pay cash for and put your kids through some state school with them coming out with no student loans, but they also will come out not indoctrinated. You got it all wrong, and Kamala Harris is here to teach you what's right. And if you've ever been thinking to yourself, I really got to get motivated, I got to get active, I got to start praying on a regular basis for my country. I got to start beseeching heaven and really, I ask you, if you're in the listening audience, we have a lot of people who listen from across the world, in England, and you'd be surprised the hits that I get on my blog from around the country where people, they send me direct emails and say, I listen to the show. They're listening from around the world. If you are a listener from another country, I ask you, please pray for our country. Please pray for America. The the same way Americans pray for other countries and for Christians in other countries, we ask that you would pray for us, because we are in a very dark time. It's a really dastardly situation that we see ourselves in, where liberals are unleashing every bit of restraint that they've ever had on social issues. And I feel like a lot of Christians are bogged down by whatever and are unable to really comprehend what's happening right now. It's as if we have so many of our own personal concerns or things that, you know, are just dominating our mental spaces, that we can't really fathom what's happening. And I truly believe it's not just Kamala Harris. It's this issue that we were talking about with the Virginia Democrats attempting to pass this bill allowing abortions up to 40 weeks. And the governor of Virginia saying, well, if a baby's born alive, they'll be made comfortable and then allowed to, you know, the doctors will decide. The doctors and the parent will decide. What? So I promised you that we'd listen to this audio from Ainsley Earhart. And I want to give you the call lines, because I want to take some calls and get some feedback here. I love hearing from you guys, especially when we have these really heavy news days. Sometimes it's hard because people don't want to call in because they want to get the information. But if you want to, the call lines are open, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Here's Ainsley Earhart of Fox and Friends, and this is this morning. And my producer actually sent this over to me because it's just so heart-wrenching to hear, but we need to hear it. Our hearts need to be wrenched. We need to hear Ainsley, and everyone else, every woman should be crying out right now, because if you're a mom already, you know what a 6.5-pound baby is. It's not something to be disposed of. It is the game changer for you. The minute the baby comes out, your life is utterly changed and you become a totally different person. I know for me, it was just like something new happened. When I laid my eyes on her, I could not believe the feelings I had and how everything, my mind, everything about me just changed. And she's expressing that so beautifully here. It's Ainsley Earhart, number 3.
When I was reading articles about it this morning, they had pictures of babies just being born. And if you've ever had a baby, my gosh, it's the best experience of your life. And when they hand you that child, it changes your life in a major way. And, you know, this is beyond, it's so hard for me to wrap my head around. Listen, I know women have complications. I lost a friend. She was diagnosed with cancer and she got pregnant. She ended up losing the baby and then she ended up losing her life. I know that there's certain circumstances, but it's the best day of your life when you hold that child. And there's so many women out there that want children. And, you know, I have so many people in my lives that weren't able to have kids. Girls in my Bible study, people down in South that I'm friends with, who want babies so badly. And so there's so many women out there that would love to take these children. And so it's just a hard topic, because the day they put Hayden in my arms, it was the best day other than my salvation. The day I got saved, it was the best day of my life.
I'm with her. I count it as obviously the day of my salvation, baptism, because I thought being baptized was such a momentous thing. And getting married, the day I got married, and each of the days that I gave birth to our kids. And I thought, you know, I knew it was going to be momentous. I knew it was going to be amazing, but it was just so much more than anything anyone could have described. And I've talked on the show about how when you're a new mom, that first 30 days or so, 6 weeks, you have this like superhuman strength where you feel like you could scale buildings, you can fly, you could do anything. It's an amazing energy that you get after you've delivered a baby. And there's also this, you've expanded. Your entire emotional ability has expanded because now you understand a different kind of love that is it's so radically, unbelievably all-encompassing and different from any other love that you felt before that. If you've had, you know, your sister has had a baby and you've loved that baby, it's amazing, but it's having your own baby is so different. And there's so many women out there who are just gutted. They've had miscarriages. They've just not been able to conceive. They've not been able to carry a baby to term. And they've suffered so greatly. And to hear women who can give birth talk so cavalierly about destroying babies. They're literally saying anyone who says, you know what, I just changed my mind. I am 8 months pregnant and I'm getting rid of this baby. And if you're in New York City, they're like, come on in. You don't even have to have a doctor. And so Kermit Gosnell said that one day he'd be exonerated. He said, I will be exonerated for what I've done because what I'm doing, there's nothing wrong with it. And if that doesn't send a shudder through you come on, are you alive? Are you with me? And I've seen the movie. I went to see it with a friend, and honestly, I didn't want to go see it because I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to face the truth about what he'd done. I'd read all the news stories, but the movie, it's done like CSI or, Law and Order. And I know some of the actors in it. Dean Cain, he's a friend. He's been on the show like a bunch of times. Alfonso Rochelle, he's a friend of mine too, out of Hollywood, and he's in the movie as well. And even Scotty Nell Hughes has a cameo in the movie. It's aside from all of the being starstruck that friends I know have made a movie, the movie is gruesome and it's grotesque and it's so utterly disgusting. Gosnell is an enlightening true story of a prolific abortion doctor who was successfully convicted of serial murder, and it's going to be available on video on demand and will be available Tuesday, February 4th on DVD. And my recommendation to you is, if you care about this issue, if your heart is torn by what we're hearing out of Virginia, New York, get a copy of this movie on DVD and invite some friends over who you got to tell them beforehand it's not appropriate for children due to language, content, and mature subject matter. It is a devastatingly accurate picture of what happened in this case. The images in the movie, some of the footage is real footage from his abortuary. But if you really want to make a difference, if you want to change the hearts and minds of people who may be on the fence about what abortion is and why it's needed and why it's still a choice, invite them over. Serve them some lasagna or whatever, and let them watch the movie with you. Watch it with them. Let them see the movie, and then don't preach to them afterwards. Just thank them for coming over and watching it. And give them a little gift bag of hot cookies to take with them on the way out. And tell them if they want to pray with you, if they want to pray together, that you're available and that you're friends, no matter what their decision is. And let's start changing hearts and minds with the truth. That's my recommendation. I plan to buy a few copies of the DVD, and I know people are pretty entrenched as far as I'm concerned, because people that know me know what I do for a living and they know where I stand politically. And so if they don't agree with me, that it's not that they haven't heard what I've had to say, but I plan to do this as well. So you can go to, it's not going to be available at the afastore.net, so you won't be able to go there and get it, but you will be able to go and get it soon on DVD and video on demand from Amazon, Best Buy, or Walmart. So, if there's ever a time where I've asked you, hey, think about buying something, this is one of those ones where I stress to you, I think it's a good idea to get the DVD of this. So let's go to the phones. Alex in Oklahoma, thank you for calling the show today.
All right, thank you for calling my call, taking my call. It's the Bible says from the tongue you can hear what's in the heart, and it's been floating over people have been hearing this up, but nobody has picked it up. It was a long time ago, people were saying, and I think Hillary might have said it, a baby isn't a baby until it's born. And so it's like this demonic catch-22 that they justify aborting a baby in the very last minutes of trimesters because of this. And then you also recall that New York set an arch of Babel in New York. And also you have to listen to that. It's been talked that a 2-year-old or toddler can be aborted because they're not aware of life and death, and they're not aware of what's going on. And that has been typed around, but nobody seems to be typing on. But that's the next move.
It is, Alex. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So first of all, thank you for calling the show and reminding us of those incidences. So we talked about this, and this was back when I had a weekly show and I was on locally here in St. Louis, and I talked about this. There was a person from Planned Parenthood, and she was high up in Planned Parenthood, and she was down in Florida, and she was on a speaking to physicians and people about reproductive health type, people who are interested in reproductive health. And she said, and there's no reason why a mother can't change her mind when her child is 18 months old up to the age of 2 years old and decide that this baby isn't what I want, and she should be able to dispose of it without having ramifications. So Alex is dead on here. And when he talks about it's a arch to the Temple of Baal. It's a 50-foot replica of the arch forming the entrance to the Temple of Baal, and it was installed in New York earlier this month, and this was back in 2015, honoring the symbol of a pagan deity that the Islamic State destroyed in 2015. And according to the New York Times, the 2,000-year-old Syrian town of Palmyra brought Muslims and Christians together for centuries. So if you're in the call queue, hang on. We'll get to you after our news and information from onenewsnow.com. And I want to hear from you. I please hold on to the phone lines. If you're leaving us now, God bless you. I encourage you to hit the subscribe button at afr.net, urbanfamilytalk.com, and stacyontheright.com. And to come back with us tomorrow, we'll be discussing this and more. I actually want to make sure that I give you this information. Tomorrow, we're going to speak to Tommy Schultz, the National Communications Director for American Federation of Children. We're going to be talking about school choice, which should be a choice. And we'll continue our discussion about this issue. There are things that we can do. God calls us to the house of prayer when our nation is in trouble. We're in trouble. The question is, will Christians respond? Please continue to pray for our country and to repent for where we are right now. God bless from the Heartland.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Always stay up to date with the latest in the culture war from the news team of One News Now. Use the One News Now mobile app. It neatly categorizes news and articles from the One News Now website in an easy-to-find format. You can read the stories, watch videos, and conveniently share any news story. It's now available for download from your phone's app store.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. President Trump came to an agreement with Democrats to support a measure to reopen the government and separately negotiate a plan for border security. While speaking on the House floor today, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy continued to call for border funding.
There has been 266,000 criminal aliens arrested in the last 2 years. This includes charges of convictions of 100,000 assaults, nearly 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings.
A bipartisan committee is meeting today to work on border security. Meanwhile, 3 separate caravans are heading north towards the U.S., one with nearly 12,000 people. In Mexico City, here's Fox's Griff Jenkins.
The more than 12,000 migrants applying for the temporary asylum is the highest numbers represented for these caravans that we've seen to date. Officials here tell us that there are more caravans on the way, and there are flyers in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, for another caravan to gather on February 16th. So there's no doubt that there's no end in sight, and we can expect these numbers to actually grow rather than decrease, despite the U.S.'s attempt to make it harder for migrants to cross illegally into the United States to claim asylum. In Mexico City, Griff Jenkins, Fox News.
Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said this week that he does not believe new sanctions on Venezuela will impact U.S. consumers, particularly at the gas pump.
Since we instituted the Iran sanctions, I think, we've been very careful in making sure that these costs don't impact the American consumer. Gas prices are almost as low as they've been in a very long period of time. These refineries impact a specific part of the country, and I think, as you've said, we're very comfortable that they have enough supply that we don't expect any big impact in the short term.
Dan Kish of the Institute for Energy Research thinks he's right.
We still get a sizable portion, largely because PDVSA owns the Citgo gas station franchise in the United States. I mean, that's their outlet. And it's also true that our production increase in the first year of President Trump from oil was over 2.5 times as much oil as Venezuela imports into the United States on a daily basis in 1 year. And that's been going down, the amount we've been bringing in from there.
Now, gas price averages have been inching up slightly in about half the states, but AAA says that's been happening for a week now, and it's due to an increase in demand. Drama in Russia's parliament as a lawmaker is arrested for not one but 2 murders. Here's Fox's Simon Owen.
Rauf Arashukov was at work in the Russian parliament when deputies voted to strip him of immunity from prosecution. The parliament speaker saying he tried to escape, but she stopped him. He was then detained by security officers and led away to face questions. Investigators say the lawmaker is suspected of contracting the murders of a political activist and an advisor to a regional leader. Local news reports say he denies the claims. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
And if you have chicken nuggets in your freezer, listen up. Lillian Wu has more on a pair of recalls.
You've heard of rubber chickens, but probably not rubber in your chicken. That possible contamination behind a recall for Tyson Foods, pulling 36,000 pounds of nuggets off shelves. They're sold in 5-pound packages labeled Tyson White Meat Panko Chicken Nuggets with a best of use by date of November 26th this year. Consumers had complained of extraneous material in impacted products, rubber named as a possibility. Another nugget recall this week was from Purdue Foods because of an undeclared allergen, milk.
That's all our time for this hour. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and download the free One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices.
Hey, Target. You thought we were done? Did you think we would give up? Well, of course not. We still stand strong with our belief that men do not belong in the women's restrooms or changing areas. It's absurd. We should not have to walk in your restrooms with the fear of someone of the opposite sex walking in on us. Together, we will stop this open door policy. Help us by signing the pledge to boycott Target at afa.net.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If you have more than $50 million in assets, this is the ultra rich, you're going to have to pay 2% a year of that amount over $50 million.
I know my motivation is to tell the truth, and I will affirm that what is in the indictment about me is accurate, and I will affirm that if asked to in court.
How late in the third trimester would you be able to do that?
The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks. I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for being here and for joining us and for sticking around on the phone lines. I want to go right to you, Mike in Virginia. Thank you for holding on. What's your comment?
Hey, Stacy, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Hey, thank you for your ministry. What's the truth in the name of Jesus on the media?
Thank you.
Hey, the 15 years.
We are losing audio on him, and so I'm going to see if our producer or our call screener can kind of help him clean that up. Let's go to Tina in Illinois while we work on Mike. Tina, thank you for calling the show today.
Hi, Stacy. Love your show.
Thank you.
I wanted to share that my heart is aggrieved and that you know what's going on and it's not, there's a problem with you. But I also wanted to share that we have a God of love, of change, and he has brought me through many major things, He has brought me out of homosexuality. He has brought me through liver failure without a transplant. The doctor had said for sure I would be dead within a few years, and it's been 20 years. And my doctors say that I completely had a miracle, that today you can't tell that I have the disease that I do. And death is on the march, that we have a God that is full of life and gives new life. And sometimes you have to go through some darkness before you have the rainbow.
Thank you for that encouragement, Tina. What an amazing story of redemption and healing that you're able to share, and that is encouraging, and thank you for that. I'm going to just say, God has already laid out for us what we can do. We're never too far gone for him to turn away from his wrath and to allow us to, avoid the full measure of his judgment. And the verse that I keep going back to over and over and over again is 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. That is everything right now. But we have to do what now? Humble ourselves, pray, seek God's face, turn from our wicked ways. Then he steps in and starts making the necessary changes. We need reconciliation and redemption and healing. We need revival. We need all that if we're going to come against this onslaught, because it's clear that just reasoning with these people isn't enough. And I'll tell you why. We've already reasoned with them. We already said back when it was supposed to be safe, legal, and rare that it was still wrong. And we were shouted down then. And now they're just going around us. And it's just a couple of votes in each house of the legislature in Virginia that will mean the difference between them literally killing babies. The same babies they used to put on commercials, the newborn wrapped really tightly swaddled and handed from the dad to the mom or the mom to the grandma. And, all those commercials about how formula was best for your baby or whatever. It's not what they were selling. It's the fact that they used to regularly show human newborns and, very young infants on television. And it was just everything you could do not to try to jump through your TV and get, grab one of the little juicy feet or legs and just squeeze the little baby. Now we're here. So let's go to Iris in Texas. Iris, thank you so much for calling the show today.
Thank you, Stacy. It's awesome. I'm glad that you're doing this ministry. It's absolutely amazing. But I wanted to make 3 points. I was a product of the 50s. My older sister had many illegal abortions in Michigan that I saw her nearly bleed to death many times. She became a Christian in her later life and changed that around as soon as I gave my heart to Christ almost 37 years ago. My life completely changed, and I saw, and I've been an advocate and a part of the Pregnancy Resource Center in one of the local suburbs of Dallas ever since then, for the last almost 12, 13 years since they've been open. But the other thing I was going to say was that my my niece also, because she saw what her mother did, she did the very same thing. But that's where that curse stopped. And I have 2 granddaughters that will be 11 on February 15th, and they were babies born at barely 27 weeks, and they fought for their lives for 11 weeks in the NICU unit. And I've seen both sides, and I know how precious life is now. And I am going to do what God has told me to do, which is contend for our faith and contend for the nation and contend for the newborn. And I know that's your heart, and I believe that's the heart of your listeners. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you for telling your testimony and your story, for sharing that on the air. It's so meaningful because I think I know it because people message me. Why are you talking about illegals? You never talk about black crime. Why are you saying, these things about people who believe in pro-choice? Why are you demonizing them? Why don't you ever comment about this thing or that thing? Which I have. I mean, there's really no subject I haven't, waxed poetic on the program. But the testimony that Iris has given and that, when callers call in and share their heart, that can be much more impactful than the reporting that I'm doing. And whether I don't care what part of it moves you. What I care about is that as Christians, for those of us in the audience, for those of us who are communicating here on a daily basis, who know the Lord, this is on us to be praying about this issue, to be fasting about this issue, to be in the pew on Sundays and to tell other people why we believe what we believe, to pray for the unbelievers in our sphere of influence, and to believe that God can turn this around. That's what we're supposed to be doing. I want to go to Mike in Virginia. I know we had tried to get on the line together. Mike, thank you for calling into the show.
Hey, sorry about earlier.
Oh, that's no problem.
Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
Hey, so abortion is something, my wife and I, we've been believers for about 15 years. And prior to that, it wasn't something that we really thought that much about. In fact, we weren't really convicted on pro-choice lines or pro-life lines. And but faith in God is clearly there's nothing but life, right? You choose life, and frankly, when a woman decides to abort her child, I mean, that's a sin. And so that's something that I believe is very personal between the woman and God, right? That's something that God can deal with in their lives if they repent of that and things like that. But a government sanctioning this is absolutely atrocious, right? And but we as taxpayers to this government, we are actually funding this practice. And so by paying taxes to the United States government, we are funding abortion. Mm-hmm. And that is whether you believe that it should be legal or you believe that it should not be legal. And so if you look at things like the slave trade in England, I mean, the things that really ended these atrocities, it was a financial impact. It eventually became financially prohibitive for people to be doing this. And so right now, the only reason why we have abortion en masse like we do is because it is financially viable for Planned Parenthood and any other provider, right? So they are reaping the rewards of people, quote unquote, reaping the rewards, but they're taking money that we have earned and that the government has taken from us.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is profitable. They do turn a profit. I was reporting on that last week. They turn a multi-million-dollar profit on a yearly basis. So the money that we give to them helps them turn a profit doing abortions. Just wanted to interject that.
So I have a question then. If that is the case, and I am totally against paying taxes to fund abortion, well, what if there are as many people that believe that abortion should not be paid for by the government? Let's pull the legality off of the table for a moment. But if we just say, well, okay, so it's legal on the land, that's very unfortunate. But if all of a sudden we say we will not pay taxes to a government who uses our money to be able to fund this abortion, will not then the funding have to come off the table for these abortion providers? And then you could look at possibly, getting once they don't have the monies by which to perform this, then eventually, just like the slave trade or other things like that will inherently go away. Because as you know, this nation is not a nation of repentance at the moment.
Not at all. Okay, so a couple things you said there. First of all, if you don't pay your taxes, then the IRS comes after you for enforcement, and you can eventually be placed in jail, lose your home, lose your assets, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to get their money. Now, the issue that we have is actually a little simpler than that, than people who, 62 million people who voted for Donald Trump, let's say 90% of them are fully pro-life, and they stopped paying taxes. Yeah, that would be an interesting concept to see the IRS try to do enforcement on 60 million people, but it's bigger than that. We're electing people who don't want to defund Planned Parenthood, and that's why it's still funded. When the Republicans are in control, they don't defund Planned Parenthood because they're afraid of the Democrats. And because they really don't, not all of them are against Planned Parenthood funding or abortion. We don't elect people who truly believe what we believe. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that the sin of abortion being eradicated from our nation's legal system, meaning that it's lawful, the fight is on right now. Democrats see more and more of the millennials who, no matter what their political persuasion, they believe a baby is a baby. And the reason is because of technology. They know that their little brother or sister was operated on in the womb and they're alive today because of Dr. Harris or Dr. this person or Dr. that person. They know their mom was pregnant. Right away, she puts a picture of the ultrasound up on the screen. Some of them, they go with the mom to the medical appointments and they feel the baby kicking. And it's just so much more real now. And for people who have an abortion, it used to be that people truly believed, women believed that it was a clump of cells. That's not really the case anymore. And Planned Parenthood nor the Democrats really try to hide that. They say, that baby's not wanted, so it needs to be aborted. That's the language they now use. They no longer hide it and couch it. You propose a very radical solution, which is to stop paying taxes, and it would put a lot on the line. And the question is, is that what God would have us to do? To stop the scourge of abortion. And when you think about how many millions, 18 states worth of Americans have been aborted, the sheer magnitude of the carnage would say, yeah, we should stop paying our taxes. I don't know how many people you would find that would be willing to do that. But praying about it and fighting within the bounds of the legal system and our legislative systems, I believe we have to change hearts and minds one at a time. We have to go to people and convince them that what they believe about abortion is wrong. The same way they try to come to us and convince us that everybody who's a Republican is a racist. I still have people literally stop me at, you know what? I just can't believe you support the racists. And they just try to convince me. And I'm like, so I'm a racist too. Well, you are supporting a racist. And I don't know why. And I'm just so disturbed by you. I've had people who honestly have never had me over to their house for dinner try to call me on the carpet in public and say that I've disappointed them by supporting Donald Trump when they support abortion. And the last time it happened recently, I was actually so dumbfounded by being called on the carpet by someone who has no right to tell me what she thinks about my opinions. And I didn't even have the proper response, which should have been, you stop supporting abortion first, then come at me. So we got a long way to go on it. It's a radical concept. We'll take more phone calls and we'll be right back with our guest. Stay there.
Are you still stuck on the healthcare roller coaster? Still paying those high premiums? And strapped into huge deductibles? Not knowing what's around the next turn? Well, then let me tell you about a sound, sensible healthcare choice that really is affordable. It's MediShare, the healthcare sharing solution people like you have been trusting in for more than 25 years. MediShare members report saving around $500 a month on their healthcare costs, and they never pay for things they don't believe in. Time to say goodbye to that healthcare roller coaster and say hello to MediShare.
Call *345 to find out how much you can save on your health care. MediShare. Call *345. Message and data rates may apply. That's *345.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
One book that is often quoted and deserves to be read is The Coddling of the American Mind. We invited the co-author Jonathan Haidt on the Point of View radio talk show to discuss his book. It began when he sat down with his co-author a number of years ago to make sense of what was happening on college campuses. They decided to write an article about it for The Atlantic with the title, Arguing Towards Misery, How Campuses Teach Cognitive Distortions. The editor suggested the more provocative title, The Coddling of the American Mind. The piece was one of the most viewed articles of all time and then was expanded to this book. 3 untruths are the foundation of the book. The first is the untruth of fragility. What doesn't kill you makes you weaker. Nietzsche's original aphorism was, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The younger generation has turned this idea on its head. It is true that some things are fragile, like china teacups, while other things are resilient and can withstand shocks. But we also note that some things are anti-fragile. In other words, they actually require stressors and challenges to grow. Our immune system is like that, and university education is supposed to be like that. Students are supposed to be challenged by new ideas, not locked away in safe spaces. Unfortunately, most young people have been protected by a culture that promotes safetyism. It has become a cult of safety that is obsessed with eliminating threats, whether real or imagined, to the point where fragility becomes expected and routine. And while this is true for the millennial generation, it is even more true for the iGen generation, who are even more obsessed with safety. We are indeed seeing the coddling of the American mind. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are just moving through all of this content. We have so much that we want to discuss. What I'd love to do is I'd love to go. We have one more caller, William in Georgia. I'd like to go to him while we're working on getting our guests together. William, thank you so much for calling the show today.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. This is the thing I don't understand. Just a couple of days ago, I went to go see my sister in Tampa, Florida. Her and her husband just had a couple of twin girls. You know, they no more than a little month old. And I looked at them, and I'm thinking to myself, how in the world do people even have the audacity to just want to destroy somebody like that? And you know, and you know the way things are nowadays, it's almost like these people's hearts are so dark they don't even have a conscience anymore.
Yeah.
When the rights of an animal has more rights than the baby or a live human being, there's an issue with that. And now tax dollars are paying for that. I have a big issue with that.
Thank you.
It just really, really, really burns my spirit.
Thank you. That's the point that I was trying to make earlier when talking about, you know, you have somebody in your family who has a baby, and you're talking about twins. So there's two little people just laying there, and you think to yourself, I don't know. What are they saying? What am I missing here about this being a person? Because one of the first things you notice if you're not a parent, and you know this about other people, you know that any person that you deal with, it's a spirit in a body, you know, that has a brain, you know, has a soul, but it's a spirit. You know that when you talk to people, when they disagree with you, when they agree with you, when they laugh, when they express themselves, you know that they are an individual entity. But it's not like that happens when they're 6 or 16 or 20. It's immediate. One of the first things I noticed about our daughter when she was a baby was how she was very focused as a baby. And she would be like, whatever she was doing, she was very focused on that one thing. And so much so that when we had our second child, what I noticed about him was that he was so much more laid back and relaxed. It's not that he couldn't focus on things, but he was just so relaxed about it. She was very, very, she does have kind of, she's kind of artistic, so she's very type A. She's very focused, very, you know, she can get anxious about things not going according to plan. And she's been like that since the very first moment I met her face to face. Everything, the way she nursed, the way she slept, the way she played, everything was like that. That is who she has been from the very first moment. Our son has been pretty laid back, and he's not changed at all. That has been his affect. The entire time I've known this boy, he has just been that way. We had our third child. So she's completely different from the first two. You can tell they're related and that they're siblings, but she is completely different from her older sister and from our son. She has a completely different way about her. Her spirit, everything about her, it's uniquely her. And you see that about the baby the moment you first lay eyes on them. It's kind of crazy because when you recognize that as a parent, you are recognizing the creation that God has placed in your care. And to say that you could destroy it for convenience, especially at that point. I mean, it's one thing for us to, for American women to be deceived into thinking it's just a clump of cells. It's not a big deal. You're not to 24 weeks. It's nothing. Or you're only 4 months. It's nothing. But it's another thing to say, here's a baby that's literally presenting itself to you, and what you're seeing, whether it's screaming as hard as it can or whether it's just whimpering a little bit and falling asleep immediately, that whatever the baby is like, it's still okay to destroy it. It's still okay to snuff out that person. We're in a really different place right now as a country. So let's go to Steve in Illinois. Steve, thank you so much for calling the show.
How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I listened to the other caller, and he was talking about taxes. Mm-hmm. And I've got a little idea I want to throw across to you here. It says in Romans 13, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Now, you go to the Declaration of Independence, and if you read the Declaration, it says that the securities rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Now, if you go down further into the Declaration of Independence, you have the grievances that the people put against the king. Mm. And those were the grievances that we're not supposed to have anymore. Those were the grievances, and that's why our Constitution was created. And in there, it says that the king should not tax the people without their consent. So you put all that together, and like the other caller said, if we're having taxes taken from us and they're used in an evil way, a wicked way, I think we have the right to withhold our taxes. Just a thought.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I didn't disagree with him, and I don't disagree with you. But the issue is that we've all seen what happens. Al Sharpton owed $4.5 million. He was allowed to roam free. He's still got a TV show. The liberals went on television and said, who cares what tax Al Sharpton pays? Certain stars in Hollywood, same thing. Other stars in Hollywood who aren't popular have gone to prison for not paying tax. Admittedly, it's huge sums of money that they didn't pay. I think it would have to be en masse. In order for there not to be kind of horrible prosecution to deter others, it would have to be hundreds of thousands of people not paying their taxes to protest abortion. It couldn't just be 1 or 2 or 10 or 100. It'd have to be hundreds of thousands. I agree with you on the merit and what the Bible says and what the Constitution says. That's not in dispute for me. I totally think it's a viable option. And thank you so much for the call, Steve. I appreciate it. So now I'm giving my producer another number for our guest. I think we had some phone issues. And so just give me just 1 second here. 240. Okay. And my producer can try that number, and hopefully we'll be able to get our guest. While we are waiting on that, let's listen to this audio from Matthew Whitaker announcing that the Mueller investigation is nearly over. This is important because here's where the humiliation train comes in. And I'm not trying to be gloaty or anything, honestly, but there has to be a reaction to an action, and it has to be equal or therefore somewhere in that zone. So let's listen to Whitaker announcing this.
I mean, fundamentally, the Mueller investigation has a very defined scope, and so anything outside of that scope would have to the scope would have to be enhanced to bring additional matters to be investigated by the Mueller investigation. But obviously, if it's not given to that investigation by an increasing in the scope of the investigation, it would be retained by the Department of Justice. We take very seriously lying to Congress, and if there are referrals made by the appropriate committees, as is ordinary course for matters like this, then we would investigate that as we would anything else. I've been fully briefed on the investigation, and I look forward to Director Mueller delivering the final report, and I really am not going to talk about open and ongoing investigation otherwise, but sort of the statements that I made were as a private citizen, only with publicly available information. And I am comfortable that the decisions that were made are going to be reviewed, either through the various means we have. But right now, the investigation is, I think, close to being completed, and I hope that we can get the report from Director Mueller as soon as possible.
Okay, guys. Live radio. We are having our guest on at 3:40, not 3:20, which is our normal time to have a guest on. So we're doing fine here. I want to get over to, I have two other things I want to get to. First off, you just heard him. He's saying it's coming to a close. We haven't seen any indictments on Russian collusion. We haven't seen anybody pointing to the president and saying, horrible, blah, blah, blah. So we're good to go. When I say we're good to go, what I'm saying is the president has not yet been proven to have done anything wrong here. And that is the impetus for the Democrats seeking to impeach him. And I honestly think that the tidal waves that are currently running against the president will reverse in some measure if he is found not to have done anything wrong in the Russia collusion investigation. And that's what the Democrats are going to be looking for. Anything within the report that they can use to point and say, well, he did do this. Well, he did lie about that. Well, look, he's, anything they can find. And they're also planning on pulling up some information about his taxes. They want to, expose his tax returns, which is interesting. Speaking of taxes, Elizabeth Warren, she's recently been in the news for proposing this new wealth tax. She actually opted out of voluntary higher tax rate in Massachusetts. So in Massachusetts, they raised taxes, but they said, for all you rich people who want to pay the higher tax, you can, but we're not going to force you to, because they knew if they continue to raise taxes and to make it mandatory and compulsory, people would continue to leave the state. And rich people have dive-bombed out of Massachusetts like it's nobody's business. Well, what she did was, over the course of a decade, she opted out of paying the voluntary increased tax rate, only beginning to pay it in 2017 when she decided she was running for the presidency. She saved over $50,000 by doing that. So basically, she proposes an ultra-millionaire tax that would place a flat 2% tax on individual fortunes of more than $50 million. It goes to 3% for those who are worth $1 billion. Her team says it would raise nearly $3 trillion over a decade. She doesn't even say what she wants to do about that. The Washington Post, which is hardly a conservative organization, says its implementation would be difficult and the potential impediments to the wealthy who renounce their citizenship reek of authoritarianism, because she says she would impose a tax on renouncing your citizenship. In their 2017 return filed last April in an election year, Warren and husband Bruce Mann checked the box to pay the higher 5.85% income tax rate on their $956,634 of taxable income that year, rather than paying the state's 5.1%. It came out to $55,947. But in the 9 previous years, she posted all 10 years of returns on her website last summer, they paid the standard tax rate each time. The optional higher tax rate has been offered in Massachusetts starting in 2002. So their decision to pay the lower tax rate saved them thousands of dollars each year. The total savings came out to more than $51,000 over the past 10 years. When asked for comment, she said, I don't have a comment. But right before Election Day, she said, well, I'll give it a look. It's funny because Warren and Mann and Mann is her husband, their taxable income jumped from $413,000 plus in 2012 when she was running for Senate the first time to $1,054,000 and change in 2013. So in 1 year, she more than doubled her taxable income. And that was the year that she became a senator. Then in 2014, it leapt to 1.5, almost 1.6 million, before falling to 1.1 million in 2015 and 745,000 in 2016. Warren's decision to pay the higher tax last fall and reported that 894 out of more than 2 million individual Massachusetts taxpayers chose to pay the higher rate. So 894 Massachusetts taxpayers out of more than 2 million who were eligible to pay it opted to pay the higher rate. Only 1,200 Massachusetts residents on average since 2002 have opted to pay the higher rate, adding about $250,000 annually to the state's coffers. Massachusetts has a budget of about $40 billion, so the extra $250,000 comes to 0.000625% of the budget. So why is this important? Because you guys know I don't give a care about how much money people make or how much tax they opt to pay. I think it's the smartest thing for you to do is to use the tax laws to pay the least amount of tax that you can, because that is the way the laws are set up, and so you should utilize them to pay the least that you can. But what I do care about is when people have double standards and they lie and say that they really think everyone who's rich should pay a lot of tax, and then she has been avoiding it for 10 years. If she truly believed that, then she would pay the higher tax rate, and she would also give some of that money away. And the secondary question is, what did Elizabeth Warren do to earn over $1 million when she was earning around $400,000 the year before? Was it paid speaking engagements? Did she write a book? Did her book sales increase exponentially because she was a sitting senator? That's what I'd like to know. Not because I care, but because I'm interested in how people make money, and because she posted her tax return. So why not? Why not share? I'm sure it's something, I'm not alleging any illegality here, but it's just funny to me that she's making so much money and she doesn't seem to have a problem with it, but she wants to tax people who are worth 50 million. So she sets the arbitrary limit at which you've made too much money. You don't set it, she does. Anyway, last topic here really quickly. A study shows that Alzheimer's looks to be caused by gum disease. It's called Porphyromonas gingivalis, a key bacteria in chronic gum disease, and it appears to be the cause of Alzheimer's. This is according to research done, a slew of recent studies actually, focusing on the connection between gum disease and Alzheimer's. Researchers from the firm Cortexme now believe their latest study shows P. gingivalis as the cause of the tragic memory loss disease, not a symptom. This is a fascinating bit of information because basically if you floss your teeth and see your dentist regularly and do not develop gum disease or reverse gum disease because it's reversible, you can pretty much eliminate your chance of having Alzheimer's. They're also working on a cure. It's good news. Anyway, when we get back, we'll have our guest. Be right back.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. A District of Columbia restaurant is $7,000 poorer because a mentally ill man dressed as a woman demanded use of a restroom designated for women. Clyde Clymer was inside the ladies' room when an employee asked for identification. The employee then asked Clymer to leave the establishment. He reported the incident to the D.C. Attorney General's office as a violation of the district's Human Rights Act. But they weren't done. The $7,000 fine is only one aspect of the punishment. The restaurant is now required to post signage telling everyone that they are free to use the restroom of their gender identity or expression. The transgendered man also received an undisclosed settlement amount for his troubles. The employee who asked for ID was terminated. So you see, this isn't about tolerance or love or anything resembling liberty guaranteed by the Constitution. It's about making everyone bow down to the left's ideological hobby horse. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called Tune In. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
The church has to take the lead in ensuring that men are properly trained for fatherhood. We have an epidemic in which boys are not growing up with their fathers. So as Christian men, we have to stand in the gap and make up the hedge so that our communities are not destroyed. When we see fatherhood as a blessing and not an inconvenience, we will see children as spiritual weapons in our arsenal. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Securing America.
Middle schools in rural Iowa are taking gun safety into their own hands, training students how to safely use a weapon like a rifle and shotgun. Steve Martin, a naturalist at the Butler County Conservation Board, says the call from the county school district was unexpected. He will help lead the training program.
It starts out with just kind of why we do hunter education, and then goes into some of the ways of how firearms work.
The program will be integrated into the physical education program beginning in February. Critics like Kyle Ann Hunter, vice president for the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence, says these students are too young.
These are kids that don't quite have the cognitive capacity yet to understand the difference between an unloaded or maybe simulated gun that they're using in training and a loaded gun that may be at home.
The program will be mandatory for 7th and 8th grade students and optional for high schoolers.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being with us today. Find out more at StacyOnTheRight.com, at StacyOnTheRight on Twitter and Instagram. And hit the subscribe button. We would love to have you with us. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Jeremy Diss, Deputy General Counsel for First Liberty. Jeremy, thank you for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I put you in the wrong spot on the show sheets. We were calling you earlier, probably totally messing up some meeting you were doing, but we're together now. So
we're all set.
Yeah, we're all set. So let's talk about this is School Choice Week, National School Choice Week. And it's really exciting because more communities than ever across the country are hosting events and really celebrating what has become not just a movement, but a new way of life for many families who were not getting what they needed for their kids in the traditional education system of K through 12 public school.
Yeah, no, it's a good week to consider all available options for folks to figure out exactly what works best for them.
So let's talk about School District of Abington Township versus Shemp. The court concluded that it might be said that one's education is not complete without a study of comparative religion or the history of religion and its relationship to the advancement of civilization. It certainly may be said that the Bible is worthy of study for its literary and historic qualities. And this is what is being used as the impetus for a number of legislators, one in Florida and possibly others around the country, who want to reintroduce the Bible back into curriculum for America's public school students to actually read and learn.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And really what the debate is going on right now, President Trump kind of shifted the ground underneath everybody by, well, the way he normally does it, right, by putting something out on Twitter, lauding, in this case, the thought that some states are having, right, about offering an opportunity for students to study the Bible during public school times. And look, whether or not they want to do that or should do that, I'll leave that to the politicians to have that debate. I'm certain they don't have some of them on your show to do that. But what they need to understand is that they can, that it is in fact lawful for public schools to be able to teach a program on the Bible. Now, they've got to do that the right way. They're really correct enough to call the Bible and its influence, in which they're taking a look at various of literature rooted in faith there, the various cultural impacts that have been made by the Bible, art that has been derived from the Bible, a variety of things that touch upon our Western civilization, history, geography, etc., that are all part of that. That, as you read at the top of the show, are a good opportunity for us to not only study, but as the court said, your education might not be complete without this study, either comparative religion or history of religion or the advancement of civilization. Another court put it really interestingly. They said, look, to ignore the role of the Bible in the vast area of these secular subjects is to ignore a keystone in the building of an arch, at least insofar as Western history, values, and culture are concerned. And so it's clearly an important thing for our society, and we ought not fear it.
Well, I mean, I don't fear it. I when our kids were in public school, I made sure they memorized the Bible at home. And now that they're in Christian school, I don't have to do as much at home because they have actual Bible classes and theology classes that they are going through in the course of their curriculum. But for most parents, they don't feel equipped to do it themselves. And most people really who are Christians, I don't even really think people consider how little the Bible is referenced, or how it's been kind of everything that refers to the Bible in literature has been wiped out, or there's a little caveat that's added, that's a religious such and so to kind of demean it. And what this is doing is saying, in order to understand our culture, in order to understand America, our founding, at the history of this country, what people believed when this country was founded, why things are the way they are, you have to understand the religious aspect. And for a lot of Americans who are completely unchurched, statistics show that the millennials are the most unchurched generation, except the ones coming behind them who will be the new most unchurched generation. They don't understand what it has to do.
That's right. And I think really at a very basic level, really basic, if the left would stop hyperventilating for a moment and realize that it's going to be really hard for you to talk about Shakespeare or Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci or a variety of things. It was hard for me to get through law school without having a reference point to Hammurabi and Moses. So those are pretty important guys when it comes to the evolution of the law throughout our civilization. So all of the president said was, this is probably a good idea. And if lawmakers and politicians and consultation with parents and local communities decide that we'd love to provide an opportunity for students to do that, there are a number of lawful ways to be able to do that. You can do it as a part of a curriculum. You got to do it correctly. Bible and Influence is a really good way to use the curriculum for that for high school levels. But you could, before school, you could do it after school. Release time for students to go to that during the middle of the day to go study religion off campus somewhere with a local church or a local synagogue or mosque or whatever you want. There's a way for people to be able to do that. We ought not fear it. The fact that we're looking at the study of what people have studied for literally millennia and in our country centuries as some sort of scary big ordeal that might threaten the institution of our country is just ludicrous. And it shows you how far we've gone from understanding how key a role that particular book is in our society to one now that people are afraid to even crack.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Well, not funny, haha, but ironic that sometimes, as this has happened to me as a parent, where someone was when the kids were smaller, and some of it is their temperament, which I think they get from their dad, because I was a little bit of a hellcat when I was a kid, but my husband's really laid back. And the kids they've always been pretty well behaved. Not to say that they haven't misbehaved, but they're pretty well behaved. And I remember when a mom asking me at school, and she wasn't a Christian, the kids were in public school, and she was like, I just don't understand, your kids are well behaved. When they're told to do something, they do it. And I said, well, we spank their butts and we make them memorize scripture. And she was so shocked. Her eyebrows went up and her eyes bugged out, and she was like, seriously? And I said, yeah, that's what we do. And so I wasn't expecting her to be shocked. I thought she'd laugh because that's what she was doing, but she wasn't. And so she said, Bible scripture? And you actually spank them? I was like, it's very rare, but yes, we spank them because they're small and they need it. And they actually memorize scripture every night before bed. And she said, and that's why they listen to you? And I said, I think that's why, because I can't think of any other reason why they'd want to listen to me other than maybe I could take away their toys. I think people really don't understand what it's a calming normative effect that the Word of God has on young minds, that it really shapes them in a way that you can't do with, Mozart CDs or and those are great. I'm not against any of the other, things that people use, but you need God's Word to help you be able to be wise and to help you think. And that's something that's lost on a lot of parents nowadays.
Well, I have a very simple. Consider the fact that the Bible is, if not in the top 5 most selling books in all of history. It's the most published book across every culture throughout the world, as it happens throughout the centuries here. But we're told somehow that's the one you're not supposed to study whatsoever. Study as much as you want of Chaucer and of Shakespeare and all these other great authors, and goodness sakes, it's worth studying all of them. But that's the one that apparently is is left off the list. Read all the Harry Potters you can, the Chronicles of Narnia, all are good books, but this is the one that we're going to keep off limits in a literature course. This doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But again, I'll just restate what I said earlier. Whether or not politicians think we should do that, that's a different question. That's something that the local communities need to have a voice in, need to discuss and discuss well. Whether or not they're permitted to do so through the law, that question's settled. They are. And if they want to do that, there's a way to be able to do that. Look, at the local community level, we'd be happy to provide some advice as to how to do it.
I'm just excited that it's coming back to the fore. I said years ago, back when I first got on radio, I was like, you know what? If people keep going this way, it won't be that, politicians are saying we should or shouldn't have the Bible. It'll be parents demanding it be put back in because the schools will be that bad. And if you look at last year's school shootings and the prevalence of violence and all of the different things that are going on in schools and the culture and kids themselves, parents are scared, and they should be. But the answer is not to cower in fear. It's to go back to our roots. And what really worked in the past was that we all knew the Bible. And whether or not we believed it was still our personal choice, but we all knew what it said, and it had an effect on us. And we need to get back to that. Now, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Sorry about the mix-up on the time, but thank you for joining us. Jeremy Diss, Deputy General Counsel for First Liberty, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. All
right. Talk to you again soon. All I want to stress to people, and, this is Christian radio. We have a Christian audience. And so, I'm speaking to the home team here, but there is no too much scripture memorization. Think about how much TV your kids watch. I'm not condemning you. My kids watch TV too. Actually, my kids are not as enamored with television anymore. They have their YouTube channels that they subscribe to, and they watch screens. But the point is, when our kids were smaller, I had a lot more control over how much television they watched. There was no TV watching during the week. No, not during the school year. And on the weekend, you could watch a show. It wasn't let me watch TV. It was, can I watch a show? And they would watch an episode of SpongeBob. And if I was really feeling generous, they could watch 2 or 3 episodes of SpongeBob and then cut the TV off, go do something else. Read, play Legos, go outside in the backyard and swing, whatever. And it really, I think, was helpful for them because they got to develop their other skills because they weren't spending all their time in front of a television. Now, the problem is, of course, the 2 children who are still in high school are going to a school where they use an iPad that is mandatory. You have to have an iPad to be there. And so it's all day long with this iPad. Now, they still have textbooks, they still have books, but it is just ridiculous that they spend so much time looking at a screen as opposed to looking at the teacher, talk to them, lecture them, looking at books and writing with their hands. So this is something that we have to push back on. And we're never going to have it as easy as we did before these screens were a part of our lives. We didn't know how good we had it back then. And we'll never have it that good again. And so I have to circle back around. First off, when we were listening to that audio about the Mueller investigation being complete, I just wanted to make the point that this is not new news. Even before Mr. Whitaker's comments, there had been signs that the probe was nearing conclusion, including the moving ahead with the sentencing of several cooperating defendants. And remember, as we heard from the audio from last week, that we knew that all of these are process crimes. They have nothing to do with the central scope of the investigation. It was Alan Dershowitz who was explaining how there isn't anything having to do with Russian collusion or election tampering that any of them have been convicted of, these Trump world affiliates. And what was interesting is, for some reason, I thought that Jerome Corsi had some close connection with the Trump campaign. But you just heard him last hour on the show. He said he didn't. Not only did he not have close connection to the campaign, he had only ever spoken to Donald Trump in passing when Donald Trump cracked a joke about him in Trump Tower. So, again, I'm hoping the Humiliation Express is revved up, coal-fired, gas-fired, whatever they use nowadays, and it's ready to come through. And I want to close out the program by stressing again that the movie, Gosnell, it's going to be released next week. It's Tuesday, February 4th on DVD. Remember, the 5th is the President's State of the Union address. I'm encouraging you to get a group of friends together and watch it as friends. Take in what the President has to say as friends, the reactions. Nancy Pelosi will be visible behind him as Speaker of the House, so we'll get to see her pressing her lips together and sucking on, the worst kinds of sour olives, but whatever. Tuesday is when this movie is going to come out on DVD, and I encourage you to get it. You can get it on Amazon, Best Buy, or Walmart. It's not available at the AFA store, but that's okay. These other options are available to you and easily accessible. Gosnell is the enlightening true story of the prolific abortion doctor who was successfully convicted of serial murder. And the reason why it's so important for you to take the time out to watch it, even though it is disturbing and upsetting to watch, is that that's what we're called to do. We're the adults here. We're called to know what is going on in our world so we know how to pray. And I want to give you the quote from Kermit Gosnell after he was convicted. And this man is a truly diabolical, evil man. He said, "I continue to feel optimistic of the eventual outcome, the vindication of what I've done, why I've done it, and how it will become accepted within my lifetime." He was convicted in Philadelphia of 3 counts of first-degree murder for snipping with scissors the necks of infants who had been born alive, 21 counts of felony late-term abortion, among other charges. His unlicensed staff members were convicted of theft by deception for performing medical procedures, abortions, for which they were untrained and unqualified. And this evil man said he would be vindicated, and New York State has just done so. If he were convicted in New York, he could use their new law to overturn his conviction, or at least try to. Let's pray about this, Christians. It's up to us. God bless you from the heartland. I'll be back with you tomorrow.